Any discussion of key signatures will have to begin with the recognition of two auditory qualities that we call major and minor. We hear and make reference to the terms major and minor all the time. We say, for example, that this song is played in the key of G major, or that song is played in the key of B minor. We know from listening to music that a song played in a major key is likely to sound bright or happy or uplifting, while a song played in a minor key is likely to sound dark or sad or gloomy. Our goal today is to discover the tonal relationships that create these major and minor qualities and how to reproduce those tonal relationships using key signatures so that the desired qualities are maintained even when we change the pitch centers of the song. Let's begin by listening to two versions of an excerpt from Johann Sebastian Bach's Ode to Joy. The first version will be in its original major key, the second version transposed to a minor key. First in the key of C major. Now again in C minor. Our ears immediately recognize the major and minor qualities of each version of the excerpt. But in order to find out why we recognize these qualities, we'll need to examine these excerpts a little more closely. Let's begin by creating a tool that will allow us to make such a closer examination. We'll make this tool by taking the notes from the melody of the major version of the Bach piece, lining them up in order from top to bottom in a stepwise pattern. We call this pattern a scale because a scale is another word for ladder, and this particular pattern looks a lot like it could be the steps of a ladder. Next, let's define this word step in terms of auditory distance or how far the tones are apart from one another. In modern Western music, the smallest change in pitch that we can hear is called a half step. Listen to the half steps depicted in the illustration. From the illustration, we see that there is a half-step scale consisting of a total of 12 tones, running from middle C to the C one octave above middle C, including all of the white and black keys in between. The symbols next to the notes on the staff, which look like number or pound signs, are called accidentals. The number or pound sign, when used in musical notation, is called a sharp. This symbol indicates a tone which has been raised by one half step. For example, a C sharp is located and sounds one half step higher than a C natural. An A sharp is located and sounds one half step higher than an A natural. On the keyboard, the white keys are always notes in their natural state. For example, C, D, F, G, A. The black keys are always notes in their altered state. For example, C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp. Notice that there are no intervening black keys between E and F or B and C. These are the only two naturally occurring half steps on the piano keyboard. Picturing a mental image of the keyboard can help you to commit this E to F, B to C half-step relationship to memory. The only other distance between two adjacent tones that we hear as a step is called a whole step. As the name implies, the whole step is made up of two adjacent half steps. For example, a half step from C to C sharp, followed by another half step from C sharp to D, results in the sound of a whole step from C to D. On the piano keyboard, a whole step would be viewed as a movement from one white key to the next white key, with the exception of E to F or B to C, or from one black key to the next black key, with the exception of the jump that occurs over E and F or B and C. Returning to our Bach excerpt in C major, and the scale that was harvested from it, we notice a pattern in the arrangement occurring between the whole steps and the half steps. Namely, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Or, if you prefer, 1, 1, 1 half, 1, 1, 1, 1 half. This particular scale pattern of whole steps and half steps is what gives the music its major sound. As evidence of how this scale pattern influences the sound of a piece, let's listen again to Bach's Ode to Joy, with the song starting on a tone of G, containing no accidentals, so that the whole step, half step pattern is displaced. We immediately notice that the song sounds almost like a major, but it is not quite there. Listening to the scale extracted from the piece, we notice the same thing. Let's take a look at the whole step, half step pattern as it occurs in this current scale. As we said, the pattern for a major scale would be 1, 1, 1 half, 1, 1, 1, 1 half. Notice that in this scale, however, the second half step is out of place, being situated between the 6th and 7th notes of the scale, rather than between the 7th and 8th. In order to cause this scale, and thereby the piece, to sound major, we will need to increase the second half step occurring between scale notes, or more accurately scale degrees, 6 and 7, by 1 half step in order to create a whole step, while we simultaneously decrease the whole step between scale degrees 7 and 8 by 1 half step to create a half step. We can make these desired changes by simply changing our F natural to an F sharp. This change to F sharp increases the distance between scale degrees 6 and 7 to a whole step, while at the same time it decreases the distance between scale degrees 7 and 8 to a half step. This change to F sharp in the scale represents a change to all F sharps in the piece. The change to F sharp now causes the piece to sound major in quality. Since we now have only F sharps throughout the piece, and since it is tedious to place a sharp symbol next to every F note that appears, we can agree to place a single sharp symbol on the F line near the beginning of the piece, just after the clef symbol, to instruct us that all Fs are to be played as F sharps. Let's listen to this Bach piece again, this time beginning on a tone of F natural, with no accidentals in the key signature. Once again, this is not the quality of major that our ears expect to hear. Repeating, the whole step half step pattern for any major scale should be 1, 1, 1 half, 1, 1, 1, 1 half. But in this particular pattern, the first half step is out of place, being located between scale degrees 4 and 5 rather than scale degrees 3 and 4. In order to modify this scale, and therefore the piece, to major, we will need to decrease the distance between scale degrees 3 and 4 by 1 half step, and increase the distance between scale degrees 4 and 5 by 1 half step. A second kind of accidental is that which we call a flat. The flat serves to lower the pitch of the note to which it is attached by 1 half step. The symbol for a flat appears as a lowercase italicized letter B placed just before the note being modified. We can transform this scale by changing the B natural to a B flat. This change to B flat decreases the distance between scale degrees 3 and 4 to a half step, while at the same time It increases the distance between scale degrees 4 and 5 to a whole step. This change to B flat in the scale represents a change to all B flats in the piece, and the change to B flat again causes the piece to sound major in quality. Since we now have only B flats throughout the piece, and since it remains rather painstaking to place a flat symbol next to every B note that appears, we can agree to place a single flat symbol on the B line near the beginning of the piece just after the clef symbol to instruct us that all Bs are to be played as B flat. There are two patterns that show up within and between the various major scales with regard to understanding key signatures. Both patterns will help to make clear how to write, read, and interpret the various key signatures. Let's begin by taking a closer look at the C major scale. When we play it, we begin on a C and end on a C 1 octave higher. This establishes the C as a kind of home base to the ear. The 7th scale degree, or B natural in this case, is only 1/2 step away from our home base of C. This half-step relationship creates a tension, drive, or demand to return to the tonal home base. Thus, in the context of the C major scale, the 7th scale degree actually serves to define the home base of C. Now let's take a close look at the G major scale just below our C major scale. In the same way, when we play the G major scale, we begin on a G and end on a G 1 octave higher, establishing the G as a tonal center. Once again, the 7th scale degree, or F sharp in this case, being only 1/2 step away from the home base, creates the same tension, drive, or demand to return to our tonal center of G. Thus, in the context of the G major scale, the 7th scale degree once again serves to define the home base tone. Consequently, we establish our first pattern and a basic principle of music, and that is, in any major key, the 7th scale degree will always be 1/2 step from the tonal center, and will define that tonal center, or what we call the key. Thus, looking at our key signature, having a single F sharp, and being that the F sharp is the 7th scale degree, we have only to count up from the F sharp by 1/2 step to find that our key is G major. Looking now at the C major scale at the bottom of the illustration, observe that the C, which is the origin for our major scale having no key signature, is 5 scale degrees away from the G, which is the origin for our major scale having a 1 sharp key signature. This scale degree 1 to scale degree 5 is the second pattern you should be aware of when writing or reading key signatures. Let's examine how this scale degree 1 to scale degree 5 pattern applies to the logical progression of key signatures. Observing the illustration, we begin with a G major scale and its key signature of 1 sharp. We'll count up to scale degree 5, which we recognize as a D natural. If we now construct a D major scale using the established whole step half step pattern, as in the illustration, we find that the key signature for D major now contains 2 sharps. The F sharp, retained from the key signature of G major, 5 scale degrees lower, and a C sharp, which represents the 7th scale degree defining D major. Thus, to read our key signature, shown at the beginning of the first measure, we find the last sharp in the sequence, C sharp, and read upward by 1/2 step to determine that we are in the key of D major. Following the pattern, we begin with our previously constructed D major scale and its key signature of 2 sharps, and we count upward again to scale degree 5, which we recognize as an A natural. We construct an A major scale and find that the key signature now contains 3 sharps, the F sharp and C sharp from the previous D major scale, 5 scale degrees lower, and a G sharp representing the 7th scale degree defining A major. Referring to our key signature at the beginning of the first measure, we find the last sharp in the sequence, G sharp, and read upward 1/2 scale degree, confirming that we are in the key of A major. We again count upward within our A major scale, 3 sharps, to its 5th scale degree of E natural. Constructing an E major scale, we see that it contains 4 sharps, 3 sharps from the previous A major scale, and an additional D sharp to modify scale degree 7. Making reference to the key signature in the first measure, we see that the last sharp in the sequence is a D sharp, and reading upward by 1/2 step, we determine that we are in the key of E major. Counting upward within the E major scale, 4 sharps, we reach its 5th scale degree of B natural. We construct a B major scale and see that it contains 5 sharps, 4 from E major and an A sharp to modify its 7th scale degree. In the key signature, we see that the final sharp in the sequence is indeed an A sharp, whereupon we read upward by 1/2 step to see that we are in the key of B major. Counting upward within the B major scale, 5 sharps, we reach its 5th scale degree of F sharp. We construct an F sharp major scale and see that it contains 6 sharps, 5 from B major and an E sharp to modify its 7th scale degree. In the key signature, we see that the final sharp in the sequence is an E sharp, whereupon we read upward by 1/2 step to determine that we are in the key of F sharp major. Finally, we count upward to the 5th scale degree of the F sharp major scale, 6 sharps, and construct a C sharp major scale containing 7 sharps. 6 sharps retained from the F sharp major scale, and a B sharp to modify its 7th scale degree. In its key signature, the final sharp in the sequence is our B sharp, at which point we count upward 1/2 step to find our key of C sharp major. Note that we have now come full circle, having started with a C major scale using no accidentals to a C sharp major scale where all 7 tones have been modified by a sharp. By the way, when I say that we have come full circle, I mean that in a very literal way. This illustration represents what is known as the circle of fifths. The illustration is not complete in that it only shows us information about major keys containing sharp symbols at this point, but there is much information that can be gleaned from this illustration. First, it gives us a visual aid for a progression through the major keys which identifies that progression as an actual circle. The visual aid also reiterates that beginning with the key of C major, there are 5 scale degrees between each new major key. With each change to a new major key, there is a subsequent addition of 1 more sharp to our key signature. Each new sharp represents the 7th scale degree of the new key. If we ever need a reminder with regard to the actual order of sharps in the sequence of key signatures, this visual aid shows us that beginning with the F sharp, there are 5 upward scale degrees between each. So, beginning with F sharp, we move up 5 scale degrees to C sharp, move up another 5 scale degrees to G sharp, 5 scale degrees to D sharp, 5 scale degrees to A sharp, 5 more to E sharp, and 5 more to B sharp. What about major keys that use the flat symbol? When dealing with key signatures that contain the flat symbol, we make use of a pattern similar to our first. Notice that beginning with the C major scale, containing no sharps and no flats, we now move downward by 5 scale degrees to reach the F major scale, which contains 1 flat. Notice also that the flat does not modify scale degree 7 in order to create a half step. In those keys using a flat symbol, the half step between scale degrees 7 and 8 occurs naturally. However, in those same keys, the half step that normally occurs between scale degrees 3 and 4 does not occur naturally, and scale degree 4 must be modified in order to create the half step. Beginning now with the F major scale, we move downward by 5 notes to scale degree 4, which is a B flat. Constructing a B flat major scale, we must lower its scale degree 4 from E natural to E flat to create the required half step. To read major key signatures using the flat symbol, the procedure is to refer to the key signature, find the flat symbol next to the last in the sequence, and this flat symbol tells us the name of the major key. For example, here, the last flat in the sequence is E flat. The flat occurring just prior to E flat tells us the name of this key, B flat major. Beginning with the B flat major scale, we move downward by 5 notes to scale degree 4 or E flat. Constructing a new E flat major scale, we lower its scale degree 4 from A natural to A flat in order to create the required half step. We add this new A flat to the key signature, already containing the retained B flat and E flat, to obtain a new key signature containing 3 flats. To read this new key signature, we find the next to the last flat in the sequence to see that this is the key signature for E flat major. Beginning with the E flat major scale, we move downward by 5 notes to scale degree 4 or A flat. Constructing the new A flat major scale, we lower its scale degree 4 from D natural to D flat in order to create the required half step between scale degrees 3 and 4. We add this new D flat to the key signature to obtain a new key signature containing 4 flats. To read the new key signature, we find the next to the last flat in the sequence to determine that this is the key signature for A flat major. Using the A flat major scale, we move downward by 5 notes to scale degree 4 or D flat. Constructing a D flat major scale, we lower its scale degree 4 from G natural to G flat in order to create our required half step. We add this G flat to the old key signature to obtain a new key signature containing 5 flats. To read the new key signature, we find the next to the last flat in the sequence to determine that this is the key signature for D flat major. Beginning with the D flat major scale, we move downward by 5 notes to scale degree 4 or G flat. Constructing a G flat major scale, we lower its scale degree 4 from C natural to C flat in order to create our required half step. We add this new C flat to the old key signature to obtain a new key signature containing 6 flats. To read the new key signature, we find the next to the last flat in the sequence to determine that this is the key signature for G flat major. Finally, we begin with the G flat major scale and move downward by 5 notes to scale degree 4 or C flat. Constructing a C flat major scale, we lower its scale degree 4 from F natural to F flat in order to create the needed half step. We add this F flat to our old key signature and obtain a new key signature containing 7 flats. To read the new key signature, we find the next to the last flat in the sequence to determine that this is the key signature for C flat major. Once again, we have come full circle from no key signature to a key signature containing 7 flats. Again, our visual aid shows us that beginning with the key of C major, there are 5 scale degrees between each new major key. However, in this instance, we count downward from scale degree 1 instead of upward. With each change to a new major key, there is the subsequent addition of 1 more flat to our key signature. Each new flat represents the 4th scale degree of the new key. If we ever need a reminder with regard to the actual order of flats in the sequence of key signatures, this visual aid shows us that beginning with the B flat, there are 4 upward scale degrees between each. So, beginning with B flat, we move up 4 scale degrees to E flat, move up another 4 scale degrees to A flat, 4 scale degrees to D flat, 4 scale degrees to G flat, 4 more to C flat, and 4 more to F flat. Now, let's examine the minor keys and their associated key signatures. We'll start by listening again to Bach's Ode to Joy as it sounds when played in the key of A minor. Our first observation is that when we extract and construct a scale from the notes of the melody, the pattern of whole steps and half steps is clearly different from the pattern for a major scale. In the case of the minor scale, the half steps occur between scale degrees 2 and 3 and scale degrees 5 and 6. The placement of the half steps is what gives this scale, and the real-world music upon which it is based, its unique minor quality. A second observation is that this minor scale, like the C major scale, is unmodified by sharps or flats. We can say then that the two keys, C major and A minor, are related in that they share the same key signature. In fact, when referring to these two keys, we say that A minor is the relative minor to C major, and C major is the relative major to A minor. Since relative majors and minors share the same key signature, we only need to commit the major key signature to memory and then find a method or procedure for associating its relative minor. The relationship is such that the relative minor to any major key is located at that major key's scale degree 6. Let's say, for example, that we want to find the relative minor to C major. Beginning with scale degree 1 of the C major scale, all that is necessary is to count upward or downward to scale degree 6, which leads us to an A natural. A minor, then, is the relative minor to C major. On the other hand, the relative major to any minor key is located at that minor key's scale degree 3. Thus, if we want to determine the relative major to A minor, we start with scale degree 1 of the A minor scale and count upward or downward to scale degree 3, which leads us to a C natural. And C major is the relative major to A minor. This method or procedure works with all key signatures, whether they contain sharps or flats. For example, what is the relative minor to G major, key signature containing one sharp? Beginning with scale degree 1 of the G major scale, we count upward or downward to scale degree 6, which leads us to E natural. E minor is the relative minor to G major. Or, to find the relative major to E minor, we begin on scale degree 1 of the E minor scale and count upward or downward to scale degree 3, which leads us to G natural. G major is the relative major to E minor. Using the F major scale as an example of a key containing a flat, let's find the relative minor to F major. Beginning with scale degree 1 of the F major scale, we count upward or downward to scale degree 6, which leads us to a D natural. D minor is the relative minor to F major. Or, to find the relative major to D minor, we begin on scale degree 1 of the D minor scale and count upward or downward to scale degree 3, which leads us to F natural. F major is the relative major to D minor. Once again, the completed circle of fifths can be helpful as a visual aid in reminding us of the patterns that occur between major and minor key signatures. In the circle of fifths involving sharp key signatures, we're reminded that beginning with C major or its relative A minor, we can count upward 5 scale degrees to reach a new key signature containing one more new sharp. For example, following the major keys, C up 5 to G, G up 5 to D, D up 5 to A, etc. Following the relative minor keys, A up 5 to E, E up 5 to B, B up 5 to F sharp, etc. The graphic also reminds us that with each major, we can find its relative minor by counting upward 6 scale degrees or downward 3 scale degrees. For example, C up 6 down 3 to A, G up 6 down 3 to E, D up 6 down 3 to B, etc. In the circle of fifths involving flat key signatures, we're reminded that beginning with C major or its relative A minor, we can count downward 5 scale degrees to reach a new key signature containing one more new flat. For example, following the major keys, C down 5 to F, F down 5 to B flat down 5 to E flat, etc. Following the relative minor keys, A down 5 to D, D down 5 to G, G down 5 to C, etc. The graphic also shows us that with each major key, we can find its relative minor by counting upward 6 scale degrees or downward 3 scale degrees. For example, C up 6 down 3 to A, F up 6 down 3 to D, B flat up 6 down 3 to G, etc. Finally, we'll mention another kind of minor key that we call the parallel minor. As shown in the illustration, a C parallel minor starts on the same note as its C major cousin, but since it contains an E flat, A flat, and a B flat to distribute the half steps and whole steps correctly, it is required to use a different key signature. We can determine that key signature by simply finding scale degree 3 of either parallel major or parallel minor scale. Scale degree 3 of the parallel minor in its unaltered state tells us directly the major key signature to be used. Conversely, scale degree 3 of the parallel major, when lowered by 1/2 step, tells us the key signature to be used. For example, using C major and C minor, we can either go to a lowered scale degree 3 in the major to determine that an E flat major key signature will be used for a parallel C minor, or, if already in C minor, we can simply go to scale degree 3 and read directly that an E flat major key signature will be used. In another example, let's find the correct major key signature to be used for a piece performed in D minor. Using the D major scale, we count up to scale degree 3, D, E, F sharp, and lower scale degree 3 by 1/2 step, from F sharp to F natural, to find that the appropriate key signature would be that for the key of F major. Or, using the D minor scale, we could simply count up to scale degree 3, D, E, F, to come to the same conclusion. In yet another example, suppose we're writing a piece in the key of E major, and want to transition to its parallel minor key of E minor. To find the proper key signature, we would count to scale degree 3, E, F sharp, G sharp, and lower scale degree 3 by 1/2 step from G sharp to G natural, to find that we now need to use the key signature for G major. Or, using E minor, we simply count to scale degree 3, E, F sharp, G, to reach the same conclusion. This concludes our lesson on key signatures. Our next lesson will introduce you to the subject of intervals.